Like and subscribe right now, or this will be in your bed tonight.
Hello people and welcome back to ProRevenge. Please click like, subscribe and the bell icon for more videos from me. This will also help me out a lot and means that I'll be motivated to make more videos. You can always unsubscribe if you want, so please just click the subscribe button. Thanks and hope you enjoy the video. Whoa guys, did you know that we now have official merch for this channel? We now have an amazing mug that you can order today. It's very high quality and features a minimalistic channel logo on the front, and on the back is everyone's favourite subreddit r/ProRevenge. You can now order one today with the link in the description. It is available in a wide selection of countries, so please check it out. So who would not want to drink out of this amazing mug in the morning for your tea or coffee? And also with each sale you are already helping me out. With each sale a percentage goes to me, which will support me to continue to make more daily Reddit videos, and hopefully then in the future I'll be able to make multiple videos a day for you all to enjoy. So yeah, the link is in the description, please check them out, and if you decide to purchase one I'll be really grateful. Thanks.
This is how I stopped the gossip for good. My mum had a fairly consistent habit of gossiping, and sharing quite personal information around. We knew she was doing it, but she would adamantly deny having ever done such a thing. I wish I could remember what she did that finally made me snap. It can't even have been that important, it was just the millionth time, and for once I wanted her to admit what she'd done and know that we knew too. So we set up the sting. My friend Jane and I approached my mum and told her that Jane was pregnant. She wasn't ready to tell her mum yet and she was really worried what people would think about her having a baby so young. She didn't want anyone to know yet, so it had to be top secret. Having set the trap, I figured within a few weeks or so I would have some evidence we could use, but I was so wrong. The very next day my sister, grandma, and neighbor all asked me how my young pregnant friend was doing. When I was asked by a lady who worked at the supermarket, that same day, I figured this had gone far enough and went home to confront my mum, only to have my dad ask how Jane was doing. I confronted my mum, right there in front of my dad, which is when she started with the usual "I would never do that, they must have heard from someone else" routine. I explained very shortly and clearly that we had fed her a lie to see how far it spread, and the reaction was glorious. My mum's mouth fell open and she just had nothing to say at all. My dad on the other hand fell back on the sofa roaring with laughter, bemoaning the fact he hadn't thought of this years ago. It was a moment I will treasure forever, and the point was thoroughly made. Now that my mum was aware of what had happened I was able to satisfy all further inquiries towards my friend's health with the true story, and my mum's audience for any further gossip was somewhat reduced. Edited to add paragraphs. Thank you for teaching me how kind stranger. I destroyed a brewery. Nearly 20 years ago, I was a brewer at a brewpub. The owner was a complete lunatic and an utter a-hole. Before I was hired, he had already purchased the brewery equipment, used, from a closed microbrewery. Problem is, it was literally 4 times larger than it needed to be for the size of the place, and to top it off he was selling Big 3 beers too. And it was a Pugsley system, brewers will know. But I made it work, even got the stupid ring-walled yeast to behave. But I only need to brew about 3 or 4 times a month. I have worked at places we brewed that much a week, so I wasn't needed anywhere near 40 hours/week. And I was salaried. So he decided I needed to work night manager at least 2 nights a week, to fill out my hours. That was fine, it was an easy gig. After our first year, he advertised a huge anniversary event, with specials on food and drink. Food specials. Commercial beer specials. And didn't even mention that we made our own, much less put anything on special. Idiot. Not too long after, I got my first vacation in over a year. And he was mad at me for insisting. But life was stressful, not least of which because my mom was in hospice, stage 4 cancer. But her condition was such that she said my wife and I should go, she'll be fine. So we went camping for a week. The day before our trip was to end, we got word she had died. 2 days earlier. My family didn't know how to reach us, only she did. We rushed home, 6-hour drive, and on the way I called my boss and told him what had happened, and that I probably would not be in on Monday as planned. This was Saturday. I found out later from a bartender that he then bitched at the chef that I was probably going to want more time off. I did in fact take Monday off, but I went in on Tuesday to do my night manager shift. Now, my mom's wishes were to be cremated, with no embalming, so by the time I got home, she was already cremated. So the memorial service was planned for 2 weeks later, right before Labor Day weekend. There was to be a memorial service Thursday, and the interment for the family Friday. So I planned and made sure that the servers were full and I wouldn't need to brew for at least a week. That Wednesday the boss comes and tells me, he wants me to work night shift on Thursday and Friday. Normally I did Tuesday and Wednesday nights, to make up for the time off I'd taken to help my dad out. He wasn't handling it well. He wanted me to come in after my mom's funeral. I flatly refused, at which point he said fine, but I'd have to work a double shift Saturday then. I nearly lost it. I walked away, and after I cooled off I went back and told him I was no longer going to do the manager shifts, and that I wanted to switch to hourly for brewery work only. He was angry, but stuck. He needed me in the brewery. Things started calming down, but after a few weeks I noticed my paychecks were for less than I anticipated. I hadn't been tracking my clock in/clock out very closely, because prior to this I only clocked in and out, so I was logged in to do manager functions, but I happened to have a couple of slips in my wallet, and because I still had manager access, discovered he had been altering my hours, eventually cheating me out of around 20 hours in just 6 weeks. And that's when I hatched my plan. I was done with this a-hole. Remember that ringwood yeast? Well, in a brewery, you harvest yeast from a fermenting batch to use to brew a later one. And since we were slow, it often had to be stored for a while before it got used. But you had to use it within 30 days, 21 is better, or it goes sour and starts dying. Normally I would take other steps to ensure it stayed clean and healthy, but not on the last batch I harvested. It just went into the cold room. And stayed there. I stopped going in very often, just logging tank levels to make sure nothing ran out and made him suspicious. I would even go in to make sure he wasn't in that day, and later message him that I'd brewed, I hadn't. And waited. On day 45, after I got the check for the last hours I worked, I overnighted my keys in with a resignation letter. He called me the next day, screaming. I told him I knew what he'd done, and I wouldn't be back. I don't know what he looked like when he went into the brewery cellar and discovered he had empty fermenters, nearly empty serving tanks, dead yeast, and almost no grain. Pity really. After that, he tried to hire my former assistant, who was working at another brewpub by then because the a-hole had forced me to fire him to save money. He laughed at him. He then apparently got the underage son of one of the brewers at a nearby brewpub which he had originally been part of to brew for him, but had to fire him because the kid kept getting caught drunk down in the cellar. So he tried doing it, and I had heard they stopped brewing entirely eventually. About a year after I left, he folded. Staff showed up one morning to padlock doors. Drove through there a few years back, not only gone but building was torn down. I felt like stopping to sow the ground with salt, but I was in a hurry.
Aggressively speed through a residential neighborhood. Now your car is wrecked, and it's your fault, dumb bubba-fucker. So this was quite a few years ago. One day my kids were skating in a quarter pipe when this truck comes around the corner with a bubba driving, and he sees my daughter come off the quarter pipe, and instead of slowing down he floors it and rips past my house, still accelerating, while yelling something about keep out of the road fuckers. I yelled also back, quote, slow down. The following weekend I'm out mowing my lawn, and I see this guy coming, so I walk out to the edge, and try to wave him down to talk, and Bubba floors it again, laughing like a maniac as he goes flying by with his engine redlining. This guy is a nut. So I go to the hardware store, and picked up 3 of those 3-foot orange safety cones, and I put a sign on each one of them, slow down, residential neighborhood, kids at play. A few days later I come outside and find the cones have been run over. I already know who done it. I'm pretty pissed off. Like really angry. And in that anger I came up with my most brilliant plan. I went to the hardware store and purchased 3 new cones, along with cement and steel rubber. I filled those fuckers with rubber and cement and let them set. After the cones were ready I put them back out in the side of the street by my house with the same 3 signs as before. It didn't take long. 2 days later I'm in my garage tinkering, and I hear that damn truck engine revving up as the Bubba goes pedal to the metal. I look up just in time to see his truck steer towards the shoulder to run over the cones. Damn, it was a beautiful sight like none I've ever seen before. He hit the first cone with his bumper and the cone fell forward and rotated the base up towards his engine block and actually lifted the front of his truck upwards as his front passenger wheel made a direct connection with the second cone and launched his truck up even higher in the air. The third cone also made a direct hit on his right tire suspension as his truck came down to a screeching halt. There were fluids running out from under his truck and his passenger tire was angled inwards at a 90-degree angle. Bubba was pissed off and started screaming about how I wrecked his truck and how I'm gonna pay. I yelled back and said, well then let's call the cops and get them out here to make a report, and you can tell them how you were racing down to road and intentionally ran over the safety cones, or I can call you a tow truck. Which will it be? We called a tow truck. I never did see Bubba drive down my street anymore after that incident. I was worried he'd try to get revenge, but nothing ever happened, and we moved out a couple years later. Edit. Didn't expect this to blow up like it has. For those of you talking about the legality of what I did and getting busted or sued, let me clarify some things here. First of all, this happened a long time ago. The legal time limit has expired for anyone to do anything about it in any legal capacity. Also, I consider myself sharper than the average bear, and I didn't enact my plan without thinking it through and thinking about the consequences of my actions. I know a thing or two about how the law works. If Bubba wanted to call the cops, I'd have gone inside my home and locked the door. If the police arrived, I'd tell them through my locked security screen I don't answer questions, and my only statement would be that I only speak through my attorney. At that point, police would make their report and run it up the chain of command. If the state or local prosecutor wanted to conduct an investigation, I'd go with an attorney and deny any involvement. They'd have to, at that point, decide how much time do they have to try and investigate this matter, and what is the likelihood of a conviction. Since I lived in a big city, I'm sure they had a lot worse shit happening that would be taking up their casa load.
Thank you all for watching. Please make sure that you like, subscribe and click the bell icon for more videos. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please leave a comment. I have lots of other videos on my channel too, so please go check them out if you want.